Okay, welcome to what we're calling the CE protocol. Now, what this is a series of videos that are going to help you understand why we've designed collective evolution to operate the way it does within its media and the way it brings consciousness and spirituality into the picture. This is something that not only encapsulates what we're doing from a media perspective and an education perspective, but also what people can do as what we've identified as shifting your consciousness from a state where we may not be all that awake or all that open to certain things happening in our world and within ourselves, to being at a point where we are living authentic within ourselves and actually able to create a world where we can all truly thrive. So this protocol is going to look through all of that. And the way we've decided to start this is by looking at part number 1, which is called breaking the illusion. So why we decided to call this first part Breaking the Illusion is it's really about shattering the quote-unquote matrix out there. If you remember the movie The Matrix, you recall that at one point the character Neo starts to understand that the world he thought was real wasn't actually the real world. Now, the reason why this relates to what we're talking about is it starts looking at the way we cover our media, the way we cover current events, the way we cover the understanding of what's happening. So everything that happens in our world is happening as a result of a current state of consciousness, a current state of being that we as a collective, which individually contributes to the collective, are operating under, that creates everything that we see in the systems and structures around us. Now, those systems and structures are functioning in such a way where there is also a level of manipulation that's taking place by a group of individuals, by a group of people known as the deep state or the cabal, or whatever you like to call it. The reason why it is so important that we understand this is because without this understanding, as with a lot of alternative media that might look at the world the way it is without having quite the corporate lens, but maybe perhaps just a little bit of a different lens, sometimes that media will miss out on this very important aspect of understanding why truly the world is the way it is. And if we don't understand it from that point of view, breaking the illusion and seeing the way the world really functions, we don't actually know where we're at. And if we don't know where we're at, we don't know how to properly think and from a point of depth, how we can actually move forward. So step number 1 for us is all about actually understanding the true nature of our reality and how our world functions from the standpoint of as deep as we possibly can go with it. This means that sometimes we're going to learn about things that are happening in our world that just don't feel that favorable, that don't feel like, hey, that seems negative, or that doesn't seem like something that I want to learn about. In fact, a lot of spiritually focused individuals tend to look at current events or tend to look at talking about the cabal or the deep state as something that is negative. The challenge with this is that this is a spiritual bypass in such a big way. And the reason for that is it doesn't want to look at the aspect of ourselves and the aspect of our reality that is happening at this very moment. Our consciousness is allowing this stuff to be created, not only because we are unconscious of it, but because we refuse to look at and recognize that aspect of what you might call darkness that is within our world. So we have to understand where that this part of the process from going from quote unquote being asleep to being awake and to truly getting into a world where we can thrive, we have to go through the process of becoming awake to what's going on in our world. It's not just a spiritual journey. It's not just a understanding the conspiracy journey. Those two worlds must come together. We must understand that that's all part of this entire equation. It's sort of like, from a spiritual perspective, you might say, oh, well, if we meditate for peace, if we meditate for allowing the world to thrive, and we truly all just do that, then we'll get there. We don't have to learn about this Illuminati stuff, this cabal stuff, and this whole stuff that's going on. We don't have to learn about that. That's all negative anyway. If we all just meditated, if 6 billion people meditated, we would change the world instantly. The challenge with that is there is truth in that our collective consciousness, when focused on something together, can create a change. That is true. The challenge is that we assume that by meditating on peace, for example, that suddenly we will have peace right away. But that's not entirely the case because we are going through an evolutionary process. So a more accurate way to look at if 6 billion people were to meditate at once and we were meditating on peace and having a world where we can truly thrive, what you might expect to actually see is a process where we start learning about, we start seeing, truth begins to bubble to the surface, and we start understanding that, hey, there's some odd, dark stuff going on the planet. There's some things that are happening. That is the pathway to peace. That is what we have to learn and discover and process as a collective to get to that point of peace. So here we have these experiences bubbling up, and we have a choice. We either look at it, understand it, see what it's representing about us individually and us collectively, transmute it, process it, and start getting to this world of peace and of where we can actually thrive. Or we continue to do what a lot of us are doing, and we just keep going, no, that's not happening. No, bury my head in the sand. That's not actually taking place. So the meditation of getting to peace, getting to a world where we can thrive, may very well bring up the truth that we have to face within ourselves, because that is simply the process, the pathway to get to where we all want to be. So what we've decided to do in our media is essentially look at the world from a standpoint where we're looking at it consciously. We're not bringing in politics. We're not bringing in all this divide and this push and pull and limiting our reality to what, all these different little games that we're playing here within our current state of consciousness. We look at our media and say, how can we look at this from a bigger picture perspective? And instead of coloring it as positive and negative, let's look at what our current state of consciousness is actually creating. That way, there's no burying our heads in the sand, there's no avoiding the consciousness or the spiritual end of it, and there's no only looking at one aspect of the world. We decide to look at it all. We decide to say, with courage, how can we look at everything that's taking place so we can truly understand it, know where we're at, and make the necessary shifts in our consciousness and our beliefs and our understanding to start projecting a world that is actually built from a new state of consciousness. That's what conscious media is. It challenges us to look at the world from a conscious point of view, remain grounded in the realities that are actually taking place and not getting caught up in political sides or other forms of bias or ego and all that sort of stuff, and then making the necessary changes to shift our world from a different state of peace or a different state of consciousness. That's what this is about. And that's why breaking the illusion is such a key aspect to this entire thing. Because if we don't do that and we keep avoiding it and we keep pushing it away, we're never going to understand where we are truly at. So this is oftentimes step one of the process for most of us. Some of us who might already be awake or aware in a spiritual sense usually still need to go through this process because a lot of times we're just avoiding this. So breaking the illusion, huge first step in our protocol, and why we cover a lot of the things that we do choose to cover that some people might think, ooh, that's a little bit dark, ooh, that's a little bit negative. You might notice that the way we cover it isn't dark or isn't negative. It simply looks at things for what it is and asks us to explore difficult questions about why it's there and how we can begin to shift it.